Hold on, this is not clickbait. We are now inside one of the most critical 48-hour windows XRP has faced in years. If you miss what happens in the next 2 days, don't cry in 6 months, because the dominoes lining up right now, in Washington, in global markets, and on-chain, are the same ones that ignite entire cycles of wealth transfer. If you hold XRP, this affects you directly. Smash that like button, drop 48 hours in the comments to lock in your spot on the algorithm, and make sure you subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. And remember, this is not financial advice. Always do your own research and consult a professional before making any decisions. The Federal Reserve is hours away from its interest rate decision, a pivot that could drop the benchmark to 4%. That isn't just a headline. It's a massive injection of fresh liquidity into global markets. When liquidity flows, risk assets move first, crypto fastest of all. Every time the Fed opens the floodgates, institutional money hunts for yield outside traditional bonds. That's where XRP comes in, as the bridge asset designed for instant liquidity settlement across currencies. The timing is perfect and brutal at once. Rate cuts are colliding with a government shutdown, and ETF approvals are still sliding through automatically. The machine can't be stopped. Policy might be paralyzed, but money is still flowing. That's how you know the next wave has already begun. Meanwhile, Ripple's National Trust Bank charter application has just completed its 120-day review cycle, meaning we could get an announcement at any moment. If Ripple is granted that charter, it's game over for the crypto company label. They'd become a regulated U.S. bank servicing tokenized assets and stablecoin rails. That single move could pull tens of billions of institutional liquidity straight onto the XRP ledger overnight. This isn't happening in isolation. Vietnam has passed its digital asset framework, identifying XRP for cross-border pilot usage. Western Union is rolling out its own stablecoin network on Solana, trying to compete for the very rails Ripple already built. You can literally see the battle for the new financial internet happening in real time, and XRP is at the center. Right now, XRP sits in a tight coil between two historic levels, support around $2.35 and resistance at $2.90. This range has reversed price multiple times since 2024. A clean break above $3 would signal a new phase of price discovery, and the technicals are primed for it. On the weekly chart, momentum has fully reloaded. On the daily, volume is compressing into an inflection point. Every major XRP rally in history has started from this exact setup. Low volatility, low attention, high macro pressure. Over the next 48 hours, we'll find out whether this is just another pause or the spark that ignites XRP's next multi-year expansion. Liquidity is expanding, regulation is aligning, and technical structure is ready to release, all inside the same 2-day window. And as always, when markets move this fast, it's not the news that makes you rich, it's your position before the news. Whales already know what's coming, and they've been moving silently for weeks. You won't hear about it on mainstream news or even from the top influencers yet, but the blockchain doesn't lie. The largest wallets have started accumulating again, and not in small amounts. Over the last 7 days, data shows millions of XRP quietly flowing off exchanges into cold storage. That's the first sign of what's called pre-positioning. When the whales stop selling and start moving assets into long-term wallets, it means they're expecting a trigger event, usually one that sends prices flying before the crowd even realizes what happened. On-chain liquidity pools are also tightening. Exchange reserves have dropped to their lowest levels since 2022, which means there's less XRP available for traders to buy when the surge begins. This is how price explosions happen, not through hype, but through starvation of supply. Every time this pattern appears, volatility follows. And this time, it's converging with real-world catalysts like the Fed's liquidity push and Ripple's bank charter outcome. That's why the next 48 hours are critical. Institutions don't wait for headlines, they front-run them. Now, here's the wild part. While everyone's distracted by rate cuts and ETFs, banking networks are already testing tokenized settlement rails. Ripple has quietly partnered with multiple liquidity providers to ensure instant bridge access once regulatory clarity drops. That means the moment green lights flash, the XRP ledger can start handling institutional-grade payments in real time. This is exactly the moment long-term holders have been waiting for, the point where speculation turns into deployment. Whales know this. They're not chasing price spikes. They're positioning for yield. By moving their holdings off exchanges, they're preparing to stake, lend, and collateralize through liquidity pools once full-scale utility goes live. They understand that the real value isn't in trading XRP, it's in owning the liquidity that global finance will soon depend on. When the world switches from slow settlements to real-time tokenized cash, these early holders become the toll operators of that system. And it's already starting. We're watching exchange order books shrink, transaction volume rise, and wallet clustering behavior that mirrors pre-rally conditions from 2020 and 2023. The signals are all there, you just have to know how to read them. Over the next 48 hours, keep your eyes on on-chain movement, not headlines. Because when liquidity starts shifting this aggressively, it never happens by accident. The big players are preparing for impact. If you think this next move will be small, think again. What's about to unfold isn't just another market bounce. It's the beginning of a structural shift in how value moves across the globe. In the last week alone, we've seen indicators that ripple far beyond crypto. Liquidity desks in Singapore, Tokyo, and London have all begun repositioning for what analysts are calling a settlement rail repricing event. That's a fancy way of saying the infrastructure of money itself is being reassigned a new value, and XRP is sitting right in the crosshairs. The clearest signal came from banking API data leaking out of Europe. Transaction latency between correspondent banks is dropping sharply, and several pilot programs are now routing settlements through RippleNet infrastructure. That means these institutions aren't waiting for the headlines or formal rollouts. They're already testing speed and compliance before the rest of the world catches on. Every time this happens, it marks the start of adoption before the public even knows it's happening. The irony is, retail investors will think they're late when the real acceleration is just beginning. Behind the scenes, Ripple has been lining up strategic corridors across Asia and the Middle East. You have liquidity providers in Japan, the UAE, and Singapore preparing for synchronized rollouts once US clarity drops. Combine that with Vietnam's legislation legalizing digital asset settlements, and you have the perfect storm. One part regulatory green light, one part infrastructure readiness, and one part market disbelief. That cocktail always precedes breakout moments in this space, and look at the charts. While traders are obsessing over micro dips, long-term accumulation wallets are growing. That's conviction, not speculation. When entities with billions at stake start quietly building positions, it means they're watching the same macro data we are. Bond yields compressing, the Fed preparing to flood liquidity, and new payment corridors snapping into place. This isn't emotion, it's mathematics. Liquidity must flow somewhere, and assets that can absorb cross-border volume will capture it first. XRP was built for that role. Here's the truth most people can't handle. By the time mainstream news declares XRP adoption is here, the wealth transfer will already be in motion. Because these moves are never sudden, they're engineered in layers. First the legislation, then the partnerships, then the liquidity tests, then the public rollout. Right now, we're between step 3 and 4. That's why the next 48 hours matter so much. It's not just another candle on the chart, it's the moment institutional execution converges with public awareness. So while the skeptics argue on social media, the serious players are already adjusting exposure, transferring coins off exchanges, and hedging for volatility. They know what's coming. And when that next announcement drops, whether it's the Ripple Bank charter, the rate cut, or the corridor expansion, the question won't be if XRP moves, but who was already ready when it did. The truth is, most people watching right now won't move until it's too late. They'll wait for confirmation, for the headline, for the chart to flash green, and by then, the wave will already have left the shore. But if this video just punched you in the gut, if it opened your eyes to how close we actually are, that feeling isn't fear. It's awareness. You're waking up right before the world does. And this moment right here, this tiny window of time, is the difference between wishing you acted and knowing you did. Because look around, everything is lining up. Regulation, liquidity, banking rails, AI infrastructure, and real-time settlement all merging into one system of value transfer. The same way the internet digitized information, blockchain is digitizing money. And XRP, the bridge asset of this entire equation, is finally standing at the exact intersection of policy and technology it was designed for. Every signal, every on-chain metric, every institutional whisper points to the same conclusion. The switch is already halfway flipped. You can choose to scroll past this, tell yourself it's just another hype cycle, or you can take this moment as the wake-up call it's meant to be. Because once that next press release hits, once liquidity floods the ledger and institutional rails light up, the narrative will shift overnight. And the people who took the time to understand, to really see what was coming, will be on the other side of that wealth transfer, watching it unfold from a completely different vantage point. So here's what I want you to do. If you're still here, that means you're serious. Comment the word ready down below so I know you stayed till the end. That one word tells me you're not just another spectator. You're paying attention. Hit the like button so this message reaches more XRP holders who need to see it before the next 48 hours unfold. Subscribe to Matrix Millionaire right now so you never miss the updates when this thing finally detonates, because when it does, you'll want to be the one who already knew, not the one saying, "I should have listened." This is the countdown. The window is small, the signal is clear, the decision is yours.